that was Allegro, number 6 from Giuliani's Opus 50. Follow this lesson for free and pick up some tips. But if you're interested, I do have an edition of all 32 pieces in Giuliani's Opus 50, and there's a link for that in the description. So number 6 is actually not too difficult at a slower tempo and without the muting of the bass notes. So we'll be talking a lot about that technique today. Once you add in a faster tempo and the muting of the basses, this piece becomes much more difficult. So depending on where you are at in your level, you can approach this piece in different ways. Probably the most practical way to approach it is before you even start playing the piece is to take just the first bar even and just practice that first measure over and over until it's really ingrained in the right hand technique. That way when you approach the rest of the piece, you won't find it too difficult. So that would involve just probably going up to each bass note rest and making sure you're actually doing it. So as soon as you play that C, you're going to mute the bass with your thumb. Mute. And then you could try going to the next rest. Mute. So as soon as you play that A, you mute the low A. And you can just go through the piece and making sure that you're muting each one in this way. When you go slow, you can really hear if you're muting it, and you can also plan that on the third note, you will plant your thumb down again. Once you start raising the tempo, the precision of that becomes much more difficult. And I raised it to just the level where I was probably muting the bass a little bit early, but it was part of it gets pretty intense. Like the vibe of the piece gets really pulled into just the dotted quarter note, and it gets very rhythmic. But I really recommend that you just slow that tempo down and make sure that you're doing it properly for a really long time, and then take the metronome and you can start with a really slow tempo and just kind of up it a little bit at a time, making sure that you're maintaining that. In terms of the articulation of this piece, from the beginning all the way to bar 8, I try to mute those basses whenever it indicates. From bar 9 to bar 16, that's a much more legato section, and I generally let everything ring out in that section, even where he lists the rests. But that's an interpretive choice. Of course, in bar 9, you want that all to ring out. Here's where your choice comes in. That's letting it ring, but there are rests. So I'll let you choose what articulation you want. I kind of went for a really rhythmic and detached bass in the first section, and then bar 9 to 16, just legato, and then a return to that more detached feel, just for contrast. So you can choose what articulation scheme you want, or just follow the music exactly. And I would recommend that you follow the music exactly at least a few times in your practice sessions to hear what it sounds like and to see if you like that. There's two ways that we can mute the basses in certain cases, especially when the tempo goes up. At slow tempos, it's not so hard to mute the basses, but one issue is that sometimes when we mute the bass, we like having our thumb on the next bass note that's going to be played, especially at faster tempos. It kind of prepares you for the next note. That's an issue though when it's going from the E string to the A string, and so you can do a different technique. You can go you mute on the A string, if you plant on the A string, you can actually mute the E string out with the side of your finger by just going a little bit deeper into that stroke. So you're resting your thumb on the A string, but you're muting the E string. That way you're prepared for the next one. This piece isn't so fast that it's actually necessary to do that. You can get used to just muting and switching the thumb in a rapid way. Once you're used to it, it's the same the whole time, so it's not a technique that's hard to get used to if you practice it very slowly at first. If you're interested in that mute, just every time you go from an E string to an A string, you can plant on the A string and mute out the E with the side of your thumb. It's a little bit more of an advanced technique, so if you're just in the like early intermediate level, I wouldn't do that. Even mid intermediate, I wouldn't bother. I would just get used to just moving your thumb over after the muted note, especially because you don't have to raise your tempo all that fast. So that's my little discussion on that. Biggest recommendation there, take it very slow, make sure you're muting those basses, and then don't worry about the tempo. If you're not able to bring it up to a fast tempo, that's okay. Whatever level you are at, mute the basses, and whatever you can do cleanly, just bring it to that level and don't worry about how fast you go. This piece can be played at any tempo. So let's just do a quick walkthrough of the piece. And then here we're just go really legato. So I've written the right hand fingering in for this bar. I'm using thumb, thumb, I am. So thumb and A, but with a repeated thumb. So you can mute those as he writes if you wish, or you can let that whole section just be really legato. Just use your third finger. That way you can get that chord ringing out that whole time. My tendency in this is to mute the bass a little too early sometimes, and that's definitely something I would want to work on. When you start raising the tempo up really high, that becomes pretty difficult to do because the faster you go, the more it decreases the sustain of the final note, right? So you have less time to switch the thumb over. Slow practice is the way to accomplish this one and to get it into the muscle memory, and then you just go about practicing it. The rest of the music in this one is fairly easy. There's not too much to talk about in the left hand. There's just this issue of tempo and articulation. But it makes for an excellent study or etude in this regard. It's just a piece, but nevertheless, it's like very instructional in that way. And there's not a ton of pieces at this level that would mute at this much. So it's a great opportunity to work on that technique.